half-centered one that went wide, and Chapman is lying on the ice till Cooley Smith as their skates were caught. They're up now. Charlie Conacher shoots the puck back to his own net to Carr. Carr, the American.
There was a time when Brooklyn was the center of the world.
There was a lively community of all sorts of people. There were theaters, there were trolleys, and there was professional sports.
We even had the Brooklyn Dodgers. Then, as if by divine right, we became the Brooklyn Americans, and they became us.
And we used to go to any American game. Paid 75 cents to sit in the end balcony.
Stolen from Hamilton, Ontario to fill the new Madison Square Garden and birthed with a bootlegger's dough, they were fated to be perennial also-rans.
It all led to the Hamilton Tigers becoming the New York Americans.
And then the fantasy met the facts, and the facts were joyless and bitter. Just like that, the Amerks were gone.
You could argue that this different vision of Brooklyn, not as the center of the world, begins when the Americans are deprived the opportunity to play.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
Well, hello there, friends. How are you doing? I appreciate you giving us a spin on your little podcast listening device, whatever that might be, in the car, on the go, while you're running in the bike, whatever you're doing. We thank you for coming to our little show. We call it Good Seats Still Available, our curious little podcast journey, each and every week, if you can believe it, into what used to be in professional sports. My name's Tim Hanlon. Battling a cold this week, but we persevere. We press on, as we say, into our indefatigable journey into forgotten sports history. This week, we have a splendid little show that goes back into ice hockey. We, as you may remember, a couple of weeks back, we had our friend Andrew Ross on talking about sort of the years prior to what the NHL would like to conveniently call the original six. And as you know, you hockey fans out there, the original six is a misnomer by all stretches of the imagination. There was a whole bunch of years when the NHL, in its more frisky days, shall we say, was quite an interesting little effort and journey going on. And one of those teams that stuck out in our conversation with Andrew is a team that we're going to be focusing on with our conversation this week with our guest Dale Morrissey. And it's about the New York Americans, for 1 year known as the last year of their existence, the Brooklyn Americans. And this is a team that literally was the last one to be pruned, shall we say, from the NHL in the we'll get into it, 1942, 1945. The real officialness of it is debatable, but it was the last team to be hived off of the National Hockey League. And that actually then became, or for the 25 years that followed, the quote-unquote original six teams. So the New York/Brooklyn Americans, that's our focus today with film documentarian Dale Morrissey. And we're going to be talking about not only the team and the forgottenness of this team, right? You New York Rangers fans think that you were the sort of first NHL franchise in the metropolitan area. No. And that's why this episode and this little series, this little podcast exists. We want to correct those wrongs and learn more about them. We're going to talk about a movie, actually, that Dale created. It's a documentary called Only the Dead Know the Brooklyn Americans. And you heard a little sort of promo at the beginning of the show. And yes, the dulcet tones of Larry King, of all people, the one of the more famous Brooklynites out there, now enjoying life out in Los Angeles, following the original Brooklyn Dodgers, now in Los Angeles, have been for some time. You may often see him on Dodger broadcasts behind home plate, sitting next to Bert Sugarman and his lovely wife Mary Hart. Larry is a fixture at Dodger games, but as a Brooklyn native, is the narration behind this very fine film called, again, Only the Dead Know the Brooklyn Americans. And Dale Morrissey is the director, the producer, the writer.